Welcome to Living in Harmony, a podcast for Christian parents who want to make the peace in their household without sacrificing their sanity. Here, we talk about everything from sibling rivalry to dating and how to raise your kids to be strong in their faith while maintaining your own. But don't worry, we're not all preachy here. That's the purpose of your church and your pastor. Here, we're here for you, to help you know you are not alone in this crazy journey called parenthood. So whether you're a seasoned pro or a brand new parent, Living in Harmony, this is the podcast for you. So grab some coffee and join us as we navigate the ups and downs of raising kids in a Christian household where the gospel is the center. We're recording, so we are definitely ready. Well, welcome back to Living in Harmony. If it's your first time here, my name's Delmar.
I'm Robert.
And I'm April.
And we get the awesome chance to hang out every single week, talk about things parents are going through, students are going through. We've been really leaning into some tough stuff this season because we've been talking about how a family should be equipped more like a battleship than a cruise ship. And a cruise ship, everything's provided for you, and that's coming. That's in the future. That's when we die. But right now, we're in a hostile culture. We're in a culture that does not share the worldviews we have, and they actually would love to destroy our worldviews. So the last few weeks, we've been getting some comments in. I've been getting some personal texts. Y'all been getting some messages, just questions. So today, we're going to take a little detour and have some fun. Does that sound good?
I'm ready.
And I'll go ahead and preface this by saying today we're going to be talking about some questions that parents and future parents have been sending in to us. And if you have any, feel free to message us. You can send us a message on our Facebook page, on our group. You can also connect with us on Spotify, iTunes, all those other places. We are almost 40 episodes into this bad boy. You know, I heard the average podcast doesn't last. How much was it?
What'd you say, 3?
It was 3. Yeah. And you know what? We'll do it even if no one's listening.
Even if no one.
We're like the Nikki Haley of podcasts. Okay? but seriously, we are grateful for everyone who does listen. And welcome. We are who we are. So today we have some questions that we're going to get into. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to throw it your way, and we'll just pick it up. I got one first.
Go for it.
Y'all don't know.
Woo.
This one you've not seen, so I figured let's come out the bat blind.
Ready?
Okay, here we go. How do I navigate the challenge of planning family vacations or outings that appeal to both my teenager and the rest of the family? Ooh. Good luck. I'm ready to learn.
Ooh. When you say rest of the family, are they thinking like everybody else is a lot younger than teenage or older?
The rest of the family.
All
just
right,
how do you
just
plan
the rest.
vacations?
Maybe we need to go both ways with that.
Go
We
ahead.
should. I have what may seem like a really simplistic answer, but it actually goes beyond just vacations. But when you get your kids involved in the creative process and they are able to help be part of the decision making, and they're able to like have their input counted into it, they have more feeling of ownership. And I think it makes a lot of things go over better. And so one of the things that may seem simplistic, but works to some degree, is you talk about it together as a family, and you preface it by talking about the fact that, like, acknowledge right up front that we all do have different preferences, different likes, different things. Somebody might be wanting, their idea of a great vacation might be that they're just sitting on a little floaty in some water, scrolling through, TikTok videos all the time. Somebody else might want to be hiking, but everybody gets to contribute to some things they want to do as part of it. And then you sort of craft something that can incorporate some of everybody's things if you can. And then you have this understanding that we're all going to be respectful for this. When it's time for all of us to watch that goofy little cartoon that none of the rest of us want to see, and you do, we're going to be like nice and watch it, and we'll even laugh and pretend we like it. And then when it's time for us to go do this other thing that you might not think is your favorite thing, you're going to go
farm.
and you're going to participate and have fun and make it fun. That's the first part.
Yeah, and I think there's a good life lesson in that too. I mean, that's and thinking back, I mean, I remember that you did that with our kids as we were doing some things, and that helps to reinforce that life lesson of you don't always get exactly what you want when you want it, and the world is compromise, and as followers of Christ, one of the things that we're supposed to do is put somebody else's needs in front of ours. And so this is a good concrete example in a way that's pretty low threat to say, hey, we're gonna put this principle into practice, and you'll get something fun, right? The hiker will get a hike, maybe not everybody goes on everything, depending on what it is. But you'll get your fun thing, but you'll then have to be in the you'll be in the taking and then also in the giving aspect of that.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is lots of communication. Actually, there's a book that my brother gave me, and I think if you Google it, you can find it. It's a good book. It's called The Family Meeting. And it's basically the power of having a monthly meeting as a family. And I know that sounds so like corporate.
I love the sound of that.
But what do we keep talking about over and over again on this podcast? How communication is important. So I want to, sit down beforehand, make your plan. Sometimes I think it's okay to just admit to yourself your child isn't going to like some things. And you know what's really bad? It's sometimes the things you think they'll like the most and maybe you spent money on. I know my parents took me to Disney World when I was 15. I got there and I was just like, this is not my game. And I know I hate it looking back on it now because I'm like, I probably make them feel like they wasted their money. But sometimes they just don't connect with the things you're trying to do. So communicating up front is important. I'll also tell you this, leverage your downtime. That's something I would say. My dad and I, we are big time. We like to go to flea markets and yard sales, no matter where we go. So when we go to the mountains, we're actually going there this June. And when we go to the mountains, the family sleeps in. Me and Dad and one of my sons, we get up and go to the flea markets and the yard sales because none of the women want to go. Now, my wife, she likes antique stores and consignment stores. So during the afternoon, while everybody's napping at lunch and after lunch, me and her will get out on the road. In case you can't tell, for me, vacation, if I'm sitting around a house, that doesn't work for me. Whereas some people, like vacation is sitting around a house. I'm just like, if I'm stuffed up there, I got to go. So everyone's different. Leverage your schedule. Sometimes it's okay to divide and conquer on a vacation. A lot of times you have something in common with your child, and your whole family shouldn't have to feel guilted into being there.
Yeah.
And there's another really important principle in there. It's understanding that people are different, right? And what works for you is not necessarily the same thing that's going to work for me, and what works for each of your kids may not be exactly the same thing, right? So, think about that, get to know your kids in advance, right? Have those conversations. What is it that you would like to do? It goes back to kind of the planning, but there's a more long-term aspect of that as well.
And I would like to say something else because I think this is really important. If you have a family situation where most everybody's kind of on the same board as far as kind of what they want to go and do or what they enjoy doing, and you've got like the one kid who likes something different, I also think it's really important that you don't go with majority rules all the time, and that the majority has to learn that you've got to value that other kid too. Because if you're the person who's always told, well, everybody else wants to do it this way, why do you have to be difficult? We're going to do it this way because that's what everybody else wants. You're reinforcing to that kid, or if it's one of the parents, you're reinforcing to your spouse or that parent that your opinion doesn't matter because it's different than the rest of us, and you just need to go along with it or else you're the problem. And I think that is a really bad message to send to one of your kids, that because you have a different, God gave you different interests and gave you different skills and talents, or, maybe, you like to do something different because that's the way, God has plans for you with that in your adult years. You're going to grow up and be this person that does something amazing in this one area, but nobody else cares about that. I think you got to compromise and just make sure and value everybody.
Yeah. And whenever that's love, right? That's Philippians 2:3. Consider other people more important than yourself. It's a great strategy for planning a vacation. I think as you get older, you start realizing the value of the vacation is being together as the family.
Yeah. Yep.
It's the memories that you keep when you go. Go home.
So sure. I used to be, and to some extent, we still want to do what we want to do, but I used to be a lot more, I want to do what I want to do. And now it's just like, I just want my kids to have good memories. And I think, man, could you imagine as a parent, if you just did it one time, I'm going to plan one vacation, and the whole point of this vacation is to give my children good memories. Holy cow.
Yeah.
It probably would look a lot different. You might end up in some stores that you're like, what is this Gen Z stuff doing? But then you might could find something they like. And the last thing I'll offer is, if you have one hobby in with your children, if you have one hobby that's the same, look at where you're going. Look and say, what's one thing we can do this hobby together? It doesn't matter for my kids. They like video games, and I don't play them that much, but I still like them. So when we're in a local area, I'll say, y'all want to go to this game store? Yeah. And what I'll do is, I'll find a local arcade and I'll take them there, and they don't get to do that around here. So sometimes it's like that. And I would just offer, go ahead and find if you have one hobby together, just do that one thing together and make a memory and bring back a souvenir from that, Yeah. So, and also just so you know, like sometimes the funnest things for vacation, it's not necessarily the new clothes you bought. It's when you were skipping rocks by the river and your dad said, hey, let's take this rock home,
Yeah.
As long as you're not on an Indian reservation in the mountains, it's an Arrowhead.
And sometimes you talk about memories. Sometimes those memories are the things that don't go right.
Yes.
Right? The
Yeah.
memory is the tent that falls down in the rain. The memory is
Yeah.
someone slipped in the puddle or something like that. So, those are, I mean, let's not pretend that we're going to laugh at those events as they happen. But those are the things that later on you'll laugh at and look back on and say, that wasn't that, a great time or a great memory for us to have.
And I'll offer something kind of in the whole vein of memory making, and you can literally look this on Amazon. They have vacation journals. If you're a parent, what would be fantastic as I do this, just keep, when you're on, even if it's just while you're on vacation, keep a journal each night before you go to bed. Write what y'all did that day. Write something funny. You don't even have to tell your children about it. When they get older, they're like, what's this vacation journal? And when they take it, it's going to take your child back to being 12. It's going to take them back to being 15. You're like, man, I forgot all about that until I just read it, and you just unlock that memory. It doesn't take you long, but man, just write it down just to preserve those memories. So that way it's also a reinforcement reminder how much you love them. And it's a really good thing. So you ready for another question?
Ready.
Bring it.
All right. So somebody else wrote in to Robert this week, and I think this is a really good one because some parents are having to manage this with their children. Also, some of our listeners may be even going, we do have students and children of parents who listen to this podcast. So this is a good question. And here it is. Ready?
Ready.
How do you manage long distance relationships? Now, I'm gonna take this twofold. I'm gonna say, first of all, we're gonna talk about in a marriage or pre-marriage context, because marriage sometimes is long distance. Mm-hmm. You never know, military. But then also
We lived that.
But then also long distance relationship with your children. I think that's also another thing. I heard this and this floored me. The average parent, child stays with their parent till they're 18, right? When the child moves out at 18, if you were to collect the time that parent has with the child, this isn't on the whole, but this is across the board. It's not for every person. But if you were to collect the amount of time that you spend with your child after the age of 18, statistically, it's 1 year. 1 year worth of time. Mm-hmm. So what that means is, a lot of the relationship we have with our children is long distance. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is that. And if we don't figure out how to bolster what that is, relationship looks like now, it's almost impossible. It's a lot more difficult when it gets older. But also, let's just back it up, because I know we have some listeners who want to be parents, and may find themselves in a long distance relationship now. And I kind of speak to this. I've did that. My wife and I dated. I was getting my master's where she was getting her undergrad. I would go there once a week, and I would see her once a week during school year. And then later on, when I moved, it was very difficult because I moved 2.5 hours away. So we long distanced at about 2 years. So all that to say, long distance can work. And actually, I think that if you figure out how to make it work, it actually can be healthy, because you're not overly dependent upon each other. I think there's a level of freedom that comes in a romantic long-distance relationship, because that's my person. We have our time where we work on that, but while I'm over here, I'm working on my life, and I'm not worrying about everything else. For me, that's very beneficial. We had those boundaries. It's like, I'm your boy, you're my girl. Okay, go do life. And then when we would talk and we'd hang out, it'd be better. there's an app we had, because there's an app for that, right? It was called Couple. And I downloaded it a while back because it has basically the whole first 3 years of our relationship. It's just imagine a text messaging service where the only thing linked are those two phones. You can put important dates. You can share photos. It's called Couple, and it links up to one other phone. It's actually a really nice app. It's for married people too. But yeah, I would think like, and when you're together, spending that quality time, I would say it's okay to have a plan. You know, when I went to Anderson,
Oh, yeah.
we didn't have a place to go because I was commuting. I'm not going to go in her bedroom at Anderson because
Right.
that's what a dorm is. It's
Right.
a girl's bedroom. So we would have a plan. And sometimes it was go to the park. One time we decided we wanted to meet halfway. We said, we're going to meet. Okay, where are we going to meet? We're going to meet in this part of the upstate. Okay, which exit is it? That one, Pleasant Grove. Okay. There was nothing there. It said there was a park. We went to a park. It was growed up. There's road grass. I'm getting like stickers on me. It was so bad. But like we just said, now it's a good memory. Like what we were doing, it was so bad. We're like, this is the absolute worst case scenario for meeting up with someone you like. But it was good. So I don't know if I'm sure y'all have had to do long
Yes.
distance because Robert was in the military. How did y'all manage that?
So yeah, we had 2 deployments in our marriage when I was overseas.
Well, 3 if you want to count the first one.
Well, that's true.
Your initial going in.
Yeah, the initial training, which wasn't overseas, but it was a separation. That is true. That was honestly, that one might have been the hardest because I was extremely limited in my ability to communicate. So we did write letters back on paper, which kids, that's where you take a piece of paper, and that's the stuff that books used to be made out of. And you would take a pen or a pencil and you'd actually write letters on it. And I mean,
Back in
words.
my day, you got the old man conversation going on over here.
And then you'd put it in an envelope, and the government would take it from where you are to where the other person was, and then you'd open it back up.
See, people have been relying on the government for their communications far too. That's why we're at where we're at.
Where
now.
we are. No, but we tried to communicate as much as we could on that, and you end up communicating about important things.
Also, we should clarify that this was before smartphones, so
Oh, yeah, it
there
was
really
before.
wasn't FaceTime or anything like that. Continue.
I'm not sure I would have been allowed to have a phone.
No,
for my
I don't
first
think you
one
would.
anyway. But yeah, just trying to find those times. You talked about having a plan, and having a communication plan. We're gonna talk on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. or we're gonna have these times when we get together, or we're gonna write letters or send emails or send texts or whatever it is. Do those things. And a lot of this, I don't know if it's a me and my personality thing or if it's a guy thing. I really struggle with doing those connection things when I'm not physically there. And so for me, it was a discipline. I did it because I knew that she needed that connection, and I had to, and I had to keep that going, even when it's like, okay, I don't really feel like it. It's not something that just jumps out at me and says, oh, I must do this thing. I don't like to make phone calls, but I do.
But you did it because
But I
I was
did it.
worth it.
Because you were worth it. And I valued the relationship, and I valued you, and I wanted to show you that I loved you and I cared for you, and keep that connection going.
Something else that you did, and I think is still applicable today, is so this was right before iPhone was a thing. So there wasn't the smartphone yet, but people could email and things like that. And so we did exchange emails, but even though there was that connection, he still, like he said, we still wrote actual letters to each other, stuck it in the mail, and would get things in the mail from each other. And that was also special because it was like something that they had held in their hands. Like I could hold a letter and know, like, he held this, he wrote on it, folded it up, stuck it in there. It was another layer of connection.
It is different. Even if the words are the same, that letter is a different thing than a
Yeah.
Well, that's like getting engaged and saying versus I'm getting an engagement ring versus you're going to get an engagement email. Like, one of them
like-
has more weight.
How about the answer is no, and you can try again next week.
It's spam folder.
And one of the things that April did with the kids when I was gone, because there was an additional aspect at that point, because it wasn't just us, it was now the kids and me. And one of
Daddy
the
was gone.
Yeah, Daddy was gone, and that was a really big deal. And so, to be able to maintain that connection, one of the things that she did is she went to the post office and got those flat rate postal boxes, and she got one for every week that I would be gone, and stacked them up on the counter in the house. And then every week it would be like, okay, here's this week's box is open, and the kids would draw things or write things or put whatever in there, and they'd put snacks and stuff in there and send it to me.
Every Friday.
and that
Friday was we would go with the kids. We go together. Friday was go to the post office, and the dude at the post office on base where we lived and knew us. But that
There's
was
a lot of proactivity in that.
It was.
But it was important not just for him to receive it, but that was important for the kids too. And I would say for anybody, regardless of what kind of long distance relationship it is, whether it's a couple or if it's parent-child, but that sometimes if it's a temporary long distance and there's an end to it and they're coming back, sometimes counting off those days can be very difficult and overwhelming. And when he leaves for a deployment and we know how long he's going to be gone, it can be depressing to look at an X off day after day.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah. And so that's why those boxes were a great idea. Honestly, that for me, and my kids, because I thought instead of seeing every single X for every day of every day of the deployment, now it's a box per week or a box every other week. And the stack wasn't as tall as if there was something for every day. And it just helped it feel like,
It's going away.
we're going to get through this faster than we thought.
That's actually not a bad idea. Something else I would offer to that. It sounds like y'all are doing this, if not intentionally, then subconsciously. Is don't be offended by the other person's love language. If you're going to be in a long distance relationship and you don't know how they love, then it's going to be exacerbated. If for example, if your love language is quality time and you live in the same community with somebody, your default spending all this quality time with them. Then when you get married, you want some space, and now they're upset because you're distancing yourself when you're just figuring out, oh, there are things quality time. We've been doing that the whole time. But that's not my thing, right? But if you are long distance, you actually have a unique opportunity to care about each other in the way that you do that, in the way that you, like my wife's love language is random acts of kindness. So, one day we were already engaged. So I was like, all right, we're moving that way. And she was at Anderson University. So it was Valentine's Day and she didn't know it. And I just told her, I said, I got called into work. And what I really done is I drove up to her apartment or her dorm. I'm standing outside and I call her, said, well, I said, look out the window. She goes, oh, she comes down. It's a random act of kindness. And then she gives me a hug and she's like, what's that? And I bought her a puppy. It was in my pocket. And I pulled the puppy out of my pocket. It was a tiny little puppy. And it was just like, it was a small thing. What I didn't know is I was going to be stuck house training a dog by myself for the next year. That kind of, I didn't think that through. But it was definitely trying to find her love language. So being aware of that is very important, I would say, especially if you're entering in this relationship now. Also, this goes without saying, but we just need to say it. If you're not married, you're not locked in. If you're not married and this long distance thing is not working, it's okay to push pause and see what the Lord does if he wants you to. Like, the worst thing you can do is just feel, because if you have that feeling, I'm locked in, chances are when you're away, you'll end up doing something stupid. Yeah. But if you are married, guess what? That's your lot. Somebody said, I think it was John Piper one time, hey, I'm married, but how do I know if this is the right one? First of all, it's like, it's the wrong time to be asking.
You're married.
Yep.
But second of all, you're married. It's
It is
the right one.
Yeah.
So I would just offer, if you are in a long distance, if you're a lady, you're not having night out on a town. I'm sorry, not with the boys. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not in the way that you did when you were in your 20s. Guys, you're not. I mean, there's just certain, and I think some people listening right now are rolling their eyes saying, "Oh, really?" There are people who need to hear that.
No, really. I mean, and I'm glad you said that. I was gonna come back to it if you didn't. Those boundaries. You said it early on. you need to have boundaries there based on where your relationship is, right? And that's, if it's a dating relationship, there still should be boundaries there, right? They may be not as firm and different and negotiable, but yeah, especially after you're married. And that's one thing, I still travel a good bit for work, and I have rules and boundaries. There are things that I don't do when I go to work. There are places that I won't go, even if everybody else is going. There are things that you just, you protect and you defend this relationship. That's one of my primary goals. When God put Adam in the garden to begin with, He gave him a woman to love and a mission to do, a garden to till and a family to serve and to protect, and that calling still exists, and that's something that we have to guard intentionally.
And men's default sin is to be passive. And if you're going to be in a long distance relationship, this is one sin you cannot succumb to. There's a lot of proactivity. It takes work, but then a woman deserves to be pursued in that way. And if you're unwilling to pursue her in that way before you're married, you shouldn't get married, because the real pursuit starts once you get married. Mm-hmm. If you can't pursue her before you get married, then what are the chances that you're really going to have the heart for it the right way once you're married? Low. So that's where I would encourage, maybe it's a time of reflection that needs to happen. Maybe you need to speak with the Lord or speak with somebody in your life who is wiser than you. I would encourage that. But now, on the other hand, go ahead.
And just real quick, once you are married, she still deserves to be pursued.
That's what I'm saying. That's when it really cuts up.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
That's kind of the point. If you're not willing to pursue her, when you read the Song of Solomon, I mean, really, the pursuit did not begin in that book until they said, "I do." Mm. And that's one of the things. If you were laxing on that before you're married, when you're married, and it really needs to cut up to 10, you might not want to. And now, you're in a situation. A pastor once said, it's better to not be married and wish you was than to be married and wish you wasn't. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, there's some truth. And unfortunately, a lot of people sit in that. I think that once you realize that marriage is this thing you work for, and this thing you gotta, you have to build a healthy marriage, which means sometimes it's going to be very difficult, and time constraints add to that. But that's also why I think sometimes a long distance, if you make it through that, those are rock solid marriages a lot of times.
And we're making it sound like marriage is a discipline and a drudgery. It is a discipline.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing joy, right? Yeah. And there's really nothing better than having a life partner who's always going to be there and who you can rely on. And that's worth pursuing, right? That's worth continuing to cultivate. That's worth working for.
Yeah, because the unstated thing that should be stated is, we're doing a podcast on parenting, but all your kids leave. Mm-hmm. They're going to be gone. I mean, they're still your kids. They're always your kids, but your spouse is the one in 20, 30 years, you're going to open up your eyes and see them in the morning, So hopefully they're still pursuing you.
But, also you were talking about the long distance aspect with our children too. And, that we had that come up with our daughter when she went to college for first her undergrad. She moved about an hour and a half away, and then now she's a little further. She's about a little over 2 hours away now, pursuing her doctor of chiropractic now. And we have that long distance relationship with her, but it doesn't feel long distance because we're pretty intent on trying to stay in touch a lot of ways. I mean, we use our family group text where we're talking a lot, phone calls, FaceTime, Marco Polo app. I don't know if you know about the Marco Polo app. That's a fun thing to use when you've got a long distance thing going on, whether it's short term or indefinite. Have you ever seen the Marco Polo app?
I have not.
Yeah, it's little video clips.
It's like little video clips, and it's kind of like.
Does it cost money?
No. It's kind of like a group chat, except instead of text, it's videos, and you can just hold up to a video clip, and then it pings to the group, and then you can reply, your video replying to each other. And Savannah actually set that up when she left to go to chiropractor school, and we've all been using it. And then also we drive up there to see her. Sometimes we'll take off on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday and go see her, and she comes back when she can. A couple, 6-7 times a year, 8 times a year. So
it's back to that intentionality thing that we come to. And I've found that I have to do that even with our 2 sons that are still in town. I will say, hey, let's go to lunch, every couple of weeks, or every once a week, or every couple of weeks. It's like, hey, let's just go have lunch, just the guys, and do that. Because if I don't intentionally make that time, it slips away, and then it's been, weeks and we haven't talked.
And it requires that. I know for us, my dad and I, a lot of times it's like we said, going to yard sales. I don't like getting up early, but I'll get up at 5:45 or 6 on a Saturday, my day off, because that's when Dad is up and out. And, there was about 10 years when I did not live remotely close to my parents. And I will give them credit for this. My parents are very good at calling. And I will go ahead and just submit this. Parents, I'm going to say it's a lot on the parents. Don't take it personal when the children don't call you. Mm-hmm. They're building their life. They're in their mind, they got goals. They're trying to achieve them. It's not that do not take it personal. If you take it personal, that's how bitterness gets in. We know what bitterness does in a relationship. Mm-hmm. What you do is you just be the person. Be like, I'm the caller. Like in my relationship with my dad, he's the caller. It's not that I don't want to call him, but that's just kind of the role we fit in. And also, I never text my father because he's a boomer. If you text him, do you know what's going to happen if I text my father?
Nothing.
No, something. 30 seconds later.
Phone call.
What'd
you want to say?
I feel like, yes. So
funny.
You got to know how your parents work. And sometimes, sometimes I'm like, I'm about to step into a meeting. I want to text my dad real quick, but I don't text him because when he calls, I'm like, I got to go. And So, but yeah, parent, like assume response, say that's my role. The quicker you can snap into that's my role, I will say at least what I've seen in other parents, they're frustrated because their kids don't want to talk to them. Like, what if you're just the person? And then you call. And once you take that burden, that unstated burden off of your child and you just carry it, you'd be surprised what that'll do to your long distance relationships. And if you have a parent and you have a long distance, you know what, and you want to be close with them, you put the burden on you. Say, hey, I'm going to call my parent. Because here's the thing. You ever heard that song? I can't remember what it's called, but The Cat's in the Cradle with a Silver Spoon.
Oh yeah, that song's really depressing.
It's really, but it is. It's about someone raising their children with certain priorities. And then once they get old, they want to have their children and enjoy them, but they instilled the priorities, and they grew up just like their child. So
yeah, what's the biblical truth in there? That very last line: "You grew up just like me." Your children will follow in your footsteps.
100%. So for me, my grandfather lived in Wisconsin, and my dad lives in South Carolina. So growing up as a child, every single night, I would witness my dad watching WWF and on the phone with his father during the commercials. That's when Dad would call. And I think there's just something that I was raised to. Like even now, I go on walks. And a couple nights ago, I called my buddy Blake, and we talked 2 hours on the phone. It's like, I guess I just kind of grew up doing it. So I think it's one of those things where you really should be proactive in the area of long distance, because it's one of those things, it doesn't just naturally happen. It is something that requires work. I mean, if you think about it, look at the scripture, the epistles. That is an example.
Yeah,
that is an example of a long distance relationship. How would the church be today if we did not have those meaningful long distance relationships? We would have so much less understanding.
Right.
So when we're proactive to communicate, it doesn't just benefit us; it benefits the other people around us. So. Y'all have any more tips on the long distance? I know there's a lot going on there.
Well, I just want to add just a quick thing that my daughter, I didn't know we were gonna have that question come up. The other day, Savannah and I were talking. It's probably been a week or so, but we were talking about care packages and specifically, and she was telling us something that I thought was kind of funny. And there's, I'm sure, a little bit of hyperbole in this, but she was saying how meaningful it was when we send the care packages. And she said something like, what is it that what is it that she said we could fill it with? Something like you could just fill the whole box with like, what did she say? Like packing peanuts or marbles or something, and something random. And she said, and I would just be so excited that I had a box to open, that somebody sent something to me, which of course we don't send that. We send cool stuff. We send fun stuff. But she listens to the podcast, so should but anyway, she was just talking about how just knowing that someone cared about you enough, that there's thought that goes into sending that package. And it says, I thought about you. I planned this. I put it together. Time was invested. Like, it wasn't just a real quick, let me send a text.
Well, that's actually
a series of things.
It's a really good depiction of the love language of gifts. And a lot of people feel guilty for having that one. It's not, because that's actually one of mine. I love giving them. I love receiving them, because it's not the thing. It's the fact someone was like, I'm going to take a portion of who I am and invest time or money into it while you're not even present and you don't even know, for you. And then when you do that for somebody else, subconsciously, that's what you're saying. So I think that's a great thing. And it kind of goes back to it. You got to know the person you're trying to be with. You got to know how they like to be loved.
Yep.
And there are ways to do that, even on a long distance relationship. So, well, hey, this has been good today. Actually, we have some more questions that's come in. So we're probably going to take another whole podcast, because we have some of these are really heavy. So way too much for us to discuss now. But we're going to revisit some more of these questions. If you have any more, like I said, we're going to be answering some more questions here on the podcast before we get back into our flow with some of the content we have coming down the pipe. So feel free to message us. In the meantime, I'm Delmar.
I'm Robert.
And I'm April.
And we hope wherever you are, you're living in harmony. Have a good one.